Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for our preview webinar for version 9. This is covering RoadEng and terrain tools. We're going to be going through some of the new features that we've got in both those products. We're really excited to share it with you. So first, a couple pieces of housekeeping, and I'm sure we're going to get asked this question. So the expected release date, it's still kind of vague. We're keeping it as fall 2019, but we've got a lot of new features and changes that are already, as we call it, in the bag. We're going to be sharing those with you today. There's probably still some additional ones that'll be added as we get close to release. You are muted throughout the webinar, but please engage with us, ask questions through the question panel, and if you want to see something again or in the future, if you aren't able to make it live to webinar, we do post these up to our YouTube channel, and all of the attendees are going to get a link to it afterwards. So here is a little bit of what we're going to be covering today. So in the terrain module, we're going to be talking about a new feature called Live Maps, going through some of our cable planning changes and cable planning analysis. And that's really specifically for forestry, so we'll try and keep that section rather short. We've got GPS Waypoint Sampling, our Avenza Maps exports, and then I'm going to be passing it over to my colleague. We're going to talk about shading, some new visualization pieces coming from our location culvert editor, talking a little bit about multiple horizontal alignments and how we can use them now as reference features. Lots of export improvements. I think this is a potential, but we're hoping to add a little chat about horizontal optimization at the end. And then we'll circle back, talk a little bit about our beta testing program, and if anyone has any questions, we will address them at the end. So I also wanted to highlight what we are not covering today. So there's a whole bunch of other improvements and changes in the software, and we're not going to be talking about these ones. We've got a Spanish version, a Croatian version that are now available in 9. So we've localized the software, some changes to drive-through mode, catchment area calculations, grading object improvements, speed improvements, auto curve generators, and a lot more stuff. I think this list we're probably missing quite a few. So there's a lot of exciting changes, and I'm going to kick it off, not just being your host. I'm actually going to show you some of the software today. So I'm going to be tackling Live Maps. So just jumping out of my PowerPoint here, and let me get up the right one. So we are often asked here at Softree, how do we get a georeferenced image in from Google Earth or another map provider? And that process was previously rather complicated with getting scale, positioning, georeferencing, and all of those things sorted correctly so it would actually be accurate. So the first new feature of V9 that we're going to talk about really solves that challenge, and we call it Live Maps. So I've got a piece of LiDAR data up on the screen here. Let's just fix my view. So this is some LiDAR data. You can see it over here in 3D as well. And there's really only 2 key steps to be able to work with live maps when we have existing data such as this. The first, I need to make sure that my data is georeferenced. Now, I would have done this likely on import. And you can see here just through my terrain setup projection tab, I'm currently set up for UTM Zone 10, which is great. So I've check the first thing that I need, which is making sure I'm georeferenced, because we need live maps to know where to go and get the data. And the second thing that's not essential, but it's very useful, is to select a feature. And ideally, this is some type of boundary feature for the area that I'm hoping to bring in a georeferenced image for. So I'm just going to go ahead here in my plan window and actually just quickly create one. So I'm just going to create a new feature. I'll just make it a 2D feature using the mouse. So I'm just going to quickly create a rectangle. I'm sure most of you know this, but take my diagonal, quickly turn it into a rectangle. And I'm going to update its properties just so I can see it a little bit better in Live Maps. So I'm just going to make it thick. We'll go purple. Okay, so now with that feature selected, I'm going to go back to the Home tab and press Import. So this is our new Live Maps tool. So Live Maps has 3 default map providers that we can work with. We've got Google, Bing, and MapTiler that are built in, and you potentially can even add in through your own map providers if you've got some additional ones. We've got an interface to do that. I went ahead and I actually liked the image on Bing the best. So you can see here my rectangle feature. It's being displayed in Live Maps, and I'm just going to crop my Live Map to be a little bit closer. So I've got my area here, and when I'm happy with the map provider, with my crop, I'm just going to simply go ahead and hit save. This gives me an ability to control the resolution. I can go for a 0.72 megabyte image, or I can go all the way zoomed in and download something that's 24. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to keep it a little bit on the smaller side just as you're watching this remotely and you don't need to watch me download a large image. So from here, hit save. It's going to download 12 tiles for a total of 2 megabytes. We're going to hit OK to continue. It's going to quickly stitch those images together. Let me save it. So we'll just save. There we go. Save our image. And this gives me my import options. Don't worry about configuring pretty much anything in this. It's all set up for you. This was one of the challenges of bringing in an image before, is trying to figure out with your reference coordinates and your pixel size and all that stuff. So we just hit OK because it's done it for us. And here we go. We now have an image in the background of our terrain. So this is really useful if you're working on preliminary design and you don't happen to have an ortho photo. We can now get that photo for you from Live Maps. Yeah, that's covering it. Actually, I'll just go back 1 second into Live Maps. Oops. Sorry, spastic clicking here. We do have an option in Live Maps as well to get terrain data. It's available only through the map tiler one. It's very low resolution. We're looking at sort of 1 pixel every 50 to 100 meters, but in the absence of any data, it is something that you're able to access. Okay, so that is Live Maps, the first of our features. I'm going to move ahead and cover our next one in the terrain module here, which is cable analysis. So for all of you non-resource industry customers, this is your chance to quickly glance at your email, go grab a cup of coffee, have a snack. For the next 3 minutes, I'm going to just quickly run us through some of the changes that we've made to our cable analysis planning portion of Terrain Tools. So overall, some pretty huge changes to this part of our software. And let's take a look at some of them by adding a D-line. So I've got, again, a piece of data here. This is our proposed road here in orange. You can see it. Yeah, so that we've got a new feature created, and I'm going to want to go ahead and add that as a new D-line. So on the cable analysis tab, I'm going to select new. And now I can set up my logging system. So this dialog box, and pretty much every dialog box within the cable portion of our software, has been changed to try and make it a little bit easier for you. So in this case, let's just quickly grab a grapple, set my tower height to 10, and change my calculation to a simple 3rd point deflection method. Hit OK. And right off the bat, you can see, one of the first very substantial changes. We are telling you visually in the plan window where you have areas of clearance and where you don't. They're color coded, and you can control those colors. So green in this case is for areas of clearance, and red is for places where you have no clearance, and you can control that here. You can also control whether you're showing this in general by toggling the cable analysis button. So we've got that set up, and it's quite useful. Another thing to help make looking and reviewing different areas of deflection useful is having something which is called auto tail station. So we can calculate where the tail station should be for a given deflection line. So for this one, we can go up here to our Edit Deflection Line tab and simply press the Auto Calc Tail Station button. And when we do that, it adjusts our station here at the end, so it allows us to have full deflection across it. So it's adjusting the length of it automatically, which is quite useful. If you're looking to explore multiple areas of deflection, we can use what we call Explore mode. So again, up here in the Cable Analysis tab, a new button called Enable Explore mode, and we can set up different logging systems and start to compare them with multiple D-lines. So in this case, I'm going to take slackline. We've got deflection for fixed skyline given load selected here. And I'm going to change my length. Actually, let's make it a bit higher. Go back to 175. We'll have 10 radial lines created. It's automatically going to calculate our tail position. It's going to show a polygon of our loggable area, and we can choose which quadrants we want to include. For this purposes, let's include all of them. And it goes here, and with the simple click off with our, you can see we're in it, we've got a new cursor mode, and with that simple click, we are able to create multiple D lines at once, showing different areas of deflection, and we can simply just move that around until we've got it in a position we're happy with. When we're happy with it, all we just press accept, and it's going to create 10 different features, or however many radial lines you specified in our plan window. Now, each of these radial lines happens to be its own unique feature, so we can delete them as we need. So we can click this one. If we didn't like it, we can delete it. So that's quite useful. You will notice when I deleted that, that was my selected feature, my profile window changed. And that's another great new feature we've got here. So if we go over here and select, well, if I can actually select it, there we go. There is our deflection line. Let's turn off my auto scale for a second so you can see it's shown here. If I was to select a different deflection line, apologies, my mouse is doing something kind of funky here. If I was to select a different deflection line, that profile window is automatically updating. So we can now explore and review all of our different areas of deflection in a much faster way. And the same goes for our cable analysis window. So in cable data, we can set it here to use the current feature. Let's just throw in a couple properties. And as we move and switch between our different D lines, both the profile window and that cable analysis window are updating for us. So that's pretty much it for cable analysis. Apart from UI changes that we're not going to cover, we've updated the libraries for logging systems for equipment as well. If you've got different setups that you're testing, you can actually see it up here in the current D-line selection. It tells you a little bit more about what type of setup you've got, loads, etc. So really exciting changes in the cable analysis front, making it a little bit easier to do that. Okay, a couple more for me, and then I'm going to pass it over to Craig. We've got some GPS changes, as I mentioned. We added waypoint sampling, and I feel like I should make a very large disclaimer. I'm currently sitting on my desk. It's actually somewhere in this building right here, like right there-ish. And I'm using Windows location services. So it's really poor quality. So you're going to see my GPS jump around a little bit, but for the purposes of demonstrating waypoint sampling, it's going to work. So I went ahead earlier and I added some waypoint samples. And this is a really great way when you're out in the field with your GPS to sample a waypoint, to add a comment if this was a really awesome location. But for the purposes of showing a waypoint, we can add that GPS waypoint. It creates a new feature here. It says really awesome location. These ones over here, they've been tagged as swamp, borrow pit location, and you can even go ahead afterwards and change the symbols that you have for the different waypoint locations. So that's very useful, especially if you have a ruggedized Windows 10 tablet or a laptop in a truck perhaps. You can take your design out in the field, make comments and annotate it on the fly. Really, really useful. The last thing I wanted to show here, kind of transferring and bridging into the location module. Well, one, we do have the same functionality, GPS, available in location. It shows in your plan, your section, and your profile window. But I've got this North Van bike path design loaded up. You can see some of my waypoints that I had put in the other design here. And now what we're going to do is maybe we want to export this to Avenza. And Avenza is a really useful field app for mobile mapping. We can now directly export both terrain and location files to Avenza. And for the purposes of this example, I felt like it'd be a great way to highlight some of our multi-plot changes in the context.
Can I just make a comment here as well, there? Sorry, but you do have that road designed right through the corner of our building, through the yoga studio. Just thought I'd mention that. The bike path.
Yes, yes, and this is a hypothetical bike path of terrible design because I'm on the sales and marketing side, but I think that is a testament to how easy the software is to use. However, I'm not an engineer. So let's continue.
One more comment. We've had quite a bit of feedback in this area, being people being able to take their designs in the field, and Aaron's not demonstrating this, but you can actually change your design in the field. You maybe start in the office with a preliminary design, LiDAR-based design, go in the field with this tool and change it and know where you are, and yeah, so I think it's the way of the future. Over to you.
Perfect. Well, I'm just going to quickly highlight how we could take this out into the field. So I'm just going to open up our MultiPlot window. So this is a quick MultiPlot that I had set up in advance. Within MultiPlot, we do have some changes, and before I export this one to Avenza, I'm just going to quickly show a couple of them. So overall in MultiPlot for version 9, we have drastically simplified the ribbon menu system. Previously, MultiPlot was split across 2 different tabs. So we had the subview tab and the MultiPlot main tab. We've now consolidated those and actually removed some buttons to make it easier for users to find and access the functions that you want in MultiPlot. So we now have just the one tab, which makes it much, much easier. A couple other things that we've done, we now have an e-library. So the e-library looks at what your current page size is, and you set that one up over here. And it has some default layouts available for download. So here we could go, and if we wanted to add a cross-section, for example, you could add a pre-made cross-section layout. We're going to be continuing to add to this library as we can, so it's something that makes it really easy. If you need to do a quick design, you can grab some default layouts in your page size. The other things that we've done here, and this one's going to be very popular, although minor, we finally have an undo button in MultiPlot in both terrain and location MultiPlot. So if you're like me and like to spastically click a little bit and sometimes bump things, it gives you a great opportunity to just simply hit Control-Z or the undo button up here and undo your last change. We have the ability as well in the chapter pagination options to control your end station. So now we have full control in MultiPlot over the station range included. And lastly, and this is another little one, but again, quite useful, in the book options, you can control your page numbering. Small things, but when it comes to creating output sheets, if you are combining multiple books, really useful to be able to control your pagination and your page numbering for both your chapter and for your book. Okay, so let's take a look at exporting this bike path project to Avenza. It's as simple as going up here to our home button, hitting Save As, and selecting Avenza. Once that's done, it's going to tell me my plan view's rotated. That's okay. It will prompt me with a save screen, which I had already done this. Let's just try that one more time. And once it's saved, you can load it up. And I'll just bring this current slide up. I did this morning. You can bring up your zip file that's being saved in the Avenza file format, send it over to your mobile phone. You can do that either through Dropbox or through just saving it to your files on your phone, load it into Avenza, and take it out. So it's a very useful way to speed up the workflow in terms of getting our output sheets, even just our windows themselves. You can save them out as Avenza. Okay, that is it for me. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pass it over here.
Thanks, Aaron.
And we will continue with more of the location functionality.
Just switch over my screen here. Show screen. Am I visible?
We can see you.
Thank you. I didn't mean to be critical about your bike path design. In fact, I think I might even have done that design and got criticized before for designing a bike path right through a yoga studio. Anyway, I'll have to go quickly here. There's quite a few features that I want to talk about. But first, I got to say, I got to put out a disclaimer. Some of the software is very fresh that I'm showing you. So anything's possible. We're working to test it and make it solid over the coming months. This particular project that I've chosen is a resource road. It's about 4 kilometers long. And the first feature I want to show you is something that we've added to the plan window to be able to shade different things. So I've got a plan window here, visible. I go into the options and I turn on shading, and then I go into the options button for that, and I can choose different types of shading. This one is for cut and fill. I'll just select that first of all. We'll have a look. This road, by the way, has got some steepish sections. It's going through a bluffy area, and it's dropping down off a plane. So one of the useful things about showing cut and fill is you can quickly see when a road is in full bench cut, and you can move the road with that visualization. So I move it back to more of a cut fill situation. You're seeing now in a section here, I'm doing some filling, which might not be what you want to do. I know on the coast here, a lot of people want their roads to be full bench if they're steep enough. So this tool assists you with doing that. Very quickly, another option we can shade is called surfaces. So I can shade various surfaces. I have in this template, I've got subgrade, surface 1, surface 2, and those are the surfaces, let's cancel from here for a second, that are coming from your cross section. So here is surface 1, it's the material, the fill material on top of the road, and then subgrade is everything underneath that. So it's the line that forms along there. So I can shade those surfaces back in here, shading, surfaces, subgrade SRF1, and I have different options for either continuous or section zones, which is what's displayed here. I'll go with continuous. And there you can see the areas of the road that are of each type of surface. Now, this isn't probably all that interesting, but if you had, let's just do this. If I had say something different here, let's assign a wall section to a part of our road. So I'm going to go in. I've got a wall template that I've already made up. I'm going to produce a Gabion wall, and I'm going to assign it to 1000 to 1100. This is somewhat rehearsed, but yeah, I'm going to put a wall section in there. We recalculate. And let's have a look in here at our wall section. You see there we've got kind of a fancy Gabion wall set up in this area of the road. Now, now I can look at the shading and look at something more interesting. I'll have a look at, sorry, wrong click, go into shading and look at surfaces. This time let's add another surface, which will be our surface 5, which is the wall material. Let's take out subgrade. So we'll just go with surface 1 and surface 5. And there you can see the section of our road that is in fact got a wall section. Now that's interesting, but we can also export this to terrain, so we can get more information from this. So I can save this as a terrain file, and I'm going to call it roads map, and I am going to include shading, and I'm going to include, so I have to set this up again. I have to set up surface, say SRF5, and I'll remove this and add SRF1. There's lots of possibilities here. I'll make them different colors. And I'll export it. I won't create a tin model, and probably don't need cross sections. The rest looks okay. Let's have a look. And there is, in our terrain file, we've got now polygons, which you can calculate the area. Yeah, I could put in the area in square units, not hectares, but and I can get the surface area of the wall. So for things like geotextiles or seating areas, this sort of capability is quite useful, and it's a derivative of the shading. So back to location, a couple more options here, plan options, shading. I'll go into code pairs. This is quite interesting. So I can set up any, on my cross section, let's backtrack for a second. Cross section is made up of code points. If you just hover over points in the cross section, you'll see there's a code there. Typically the ditch is called DIR for the inside right, and DOR for the outside right, and similarly DIL and DOL. So I can choose to shade between any two pairs of codes. I could shade between the road edges. I could shade between shoulders. I could do anything that's coded on the template. I can now choose a set of pairs that represents that and shade it. So let's just, for example, do the easy one here. Oh, I keep clicking on that. There we go. So I'm going to go with code pairs, and I've got ditch inside left, ditch outside left, inside right, outside right. And we'll just go ahead and shade that. And now, if I zoom into my area, you can see in a section here, we've got a bit of a ditch showing. And section down here, it's going to have ditches on both sides, and so on. Again, you can export it, get the areas, or just use it to visualize things. One more option on shading that's interesting, I believe, is what we call attributes, and this is really quite generic. If I choose an attribute, and there's quite a long list of these things, I can select all sorts of things. Some of them make sense, some of them don't make sense, but I can choose to shade them. I've chosen grade because it's quite interesting, so I'm going to shade the grading. Our grading in this design goes from, or grades I should say, go from -10 to about 6.5. So let's say we want to shade 4 intervals. We'll give red. High grades are going to get red, and gentler grades will get green. So it's going to vary between these. You can set them explicitly. This will just automatically create 4 intervals. Just going to go ahead and do this. Again, continuous. I can control the width of the shading. 5 is probably going to be about right. So there you can see that in areas down here, you're in that first grading interval. The grade is quite steep coming down this hill. And over here, it's obviously more gentle and so on. So it's another way to visualize things. This feature is actually not finished. We're working on being able to display multiple attributes at the same time. So you could look at something like curvature versus grade. So you make sure that on your curves you don't have steep grades, things like that. So there hopefully will be more flexibility coming here. Okay, the next thing, let me just turn the shading off. Next thing I wanted to show you is some improvements we've made to export from location. I should zoom out a little bit and show you that in this design I actually have several alignments. I've got a spur road coming off and the boundary of like a pad also, and those are alignments. I can switch between them and so on. So again, I have a design file with multiple alignments. We have added now in the save as function, save as terrain, the ability to save a bunch of alignments, the whole file if you want. So I can save this. Let's call this roads map again. Do I have that open? No. Roads map. We'll save this. And up here at the top it says horizontal alignments. I can choose all. This time I will include sections, surface limits, and I'll create a terrain model, and I'll turn off shading. So the main point here is that I'm going to export all my alignments at once and create a surface from them. And there we are. We open up in terrain. Just have a quick look. You can see we've got all our alignments exported. There's some issues at the intersection that would have to be cleaned up, and the only way now to do that really is in terrain. But we can export all our alignments, and yeah, that is new. Very similarly now, when you go to slope stake this, and if you've got some instrument that takes a land XML file, total station, or even machine grading applications, you want to save your design out as a land XML file, and you want to save it as a land XML surface. And so I can choose land XML. I've already done this morning. Forest Road Main, land XML. And now here again we have the option for all alignments or just the current alignment. We have, you can choose the surface you want to export or all surfaces. Save this out. It's going to go through all the surfaces. Now terrain can only read and use one of the surfaces at a time. So one surface in a file in terrain. But other software, other CAD software, for instance, Civil 3D, can read in multiple surfaces. So very quickly here, you can get multiple surfaces out of the design software, go into Civil 3D, and create section lines and create sections from it using this. So it's quite convenient that way. The other thing I wanted to show you, and I'm not sure if I did in the previous one, let's just go here, Forest Road. There, it's finished. It's I created this, I exported this. I wanted to show you that we now export culverts as well, but I don't think I did it. No. Okay, well let's do that. So again, I'm going to save this as a terrain file, and we now can export culverts with everything else. Roads maps, yes. Yeah, I didn't have this checked on culverts. The rest I think should be okay. Right, now, it's easiest for me. Oh, there's one down there. I just have a look in 3D. Somewhere here is a culvert. There we go. So yeah, they're three-dimensional culverts. Well, three-dimensional, they're 2.5-dimensional culverts that you can see, and they're now in the terrain file. The last export option I wanted to show you was a new feature in location anyway, which is to take the whole design and export it to Google Earth. Maybe a client presentation, could be looking at different alignments. Again, current alignment, all alignments, and I might turn the shading on here to show subgrade surface, and I'll get rid of these. Do this quickly. Opens up Google Earth. Again, this is sort of a derivative of the shading enhancement, but now we should be able to see that shaded area and the extents of the disturbed area of the road in Civil 3D. And there we go. You can zoom in, and there's the extents of your road overlaid on Civil 3D. Right. So the next thing I want to show you is more about multiple horizontal alignments. So this really is a work in progress. We've been working on it very recently, and it will continue for a while. But you can see I've got a pad area here, and as I showed you before, I can switch between different alignments. So I've created an alignment which represents the outside of the pad on the right and on the left, and I've got an alignment which is the center line going down the pad. And then what I did was I tied the template to the other features, which are now available as reference features. So I just look at this width. I'm referring the width of the road in this case to be reference feature 2, which is my other alignment, landing center line left. So it's tying the edge of the road to it and stretching it out to form that padded area. The other thing, the other alignments are really, if you're familiar with it, are really like reference features. So there's an alignment. I can go into my section window or profile window, and I can turn on these reference features, and I can look at the intersection of these reference features with my section. So we'll see, there they are. So that point there is where the other alignment is, if I get it centered. So those are just like reference features. I could set up reference features in my profile as well. So quite a bit of flexibility and more to come with respect to reference features and multiple alignments. The last thing I wanted to very quickly show, I know I'm running overtime, is the optimization, horizontal optimization. So I'm going to switch examples here because I had previously prepared this example. I've got another location design. I did this a few months back. Anyway, yeah, it's not something I just did overnight, but I have two alignments. I have an original alignment, which is, I'll go into my, or I can just switch alignments. So there's the original alignment. It's called original, runs like that, and it's a short section of road. It's got 4 curves in it. Anyway, what I can do is I can optimize, process HA optimization. I can tell the horizontal optimizer that I want to optimize the location of some IPs, and I can say, look at each of these IPs and move the alignment around to search for a lower cost solution. Of course, you have to set up the vertical parameters to do this, but once you've done that, you can come in here for the horizontal optimization, tell it which IPs you want it to move, and then process. Typically, it's going to take hours, sometimes overnight, to look for a better solution. In this case, I think I let it run overnight, and I ended up with, by the way, the cost of this short section of road was $128,000. When I optimized it, I'll just switch over to the optimal. I dropped it down a bit, not a whole lot, but you know, straightened it out a bit, and I got a better alignment, and I didn't have to do very much work to get that. So users of Softree Optimal version 9 will get this new feature to optimize horizontally. Again, it's a work in progress. That's it. I think I've covered the ground that I wanted to, and I'm open for questions if anyone has any questions.
Perfect. Well, while people think about their questions, I'm just going to steal the screen here, Craig, for you. Okay, I just wanted to let everyone know that beta testing is available. So we do have, a few hundred customers right now that are currently testing 9. You can absolutely join that program if you are part of our annual support program. Beta testing is available. We can change over your license. You can run version 8 and version 9. Automatically. Just write a comment. Actually, you can do it in the question panel here, and later today we can set you up with a beta testing version of 9. If you're not sure if you're on support, feel free to comment anyways, and we can take a look at your account for you. Yes, so that was our beta testing, and then we can address a few of the questions. So we've got one here. When is it releasing? So I'm guessing this person missed my very brief intro where I vaguely said it is coming out, we're saying fall, so sometime in the next couple months. We do have a few features that are just of a little bit of additional refinement that we're working through. So once that's done, we will be officially releasing it. But yeah, you can get onto the beta now. Next question. Can we go over exporting a design to Avenza? Absolutely. We can do that in a moment. What I might do is just pause my screen here and get that queued up. Are there any other questions that we can answer? Okay, so I've got, in this case, a MultiPlot. You could do this with a window, but exporting to Avenza, it's just File, Save As, and you're just toggling your drop down to Avenza file. So what this will do, it's going to create, and here's the files I created during the webinar. It's going to create, we'll probably overwrite them. And we'll just pull this up. So it created in my webinar folder here where I saved it, one page for each, and it looks like there might be a second page, but we've created a zipped file for each, and you can load those up into Avenza. So I'll just bring up the output of what it did, because unfortunately I can't show you the phone with it loaded on, but what you would do is just load that into your Avenza app. I did this through emailing it to myself, to my cell phone, and I opened it up through Pages. We do have a video showing this process where we actually recorded a video on the on the cell phone, and we've loaded that up to our YouTube channel, so we absolutely could record that and include it in our e-blast that goes back. Any other questions?
I just make a comment there, Aaron. When you exported it, it warned you that the plan view was rotated. It still works fine, but the reason for the warning is you could have a plan profile sheet, and if the plan view is rotated, it's a little bit confusing when you see your GPS location on the sheet and you read vertically down onto the profile. It's not going to match, if that makes sense. So if you've got a plan profile sheet together, you probably want to try and keep the orientation of the plan view north-south.
And just a follow-up question on that one. Very much like I needed to do with live maps, you would need to have your design geo-referenced in order for this to work. Otherwise, it's not going to actually know where your PDF map is. So again, going up into the terrain setup tab, you would need to do that on the terrain side, making sure you've got a projection set up for your design, and we can export it over to Avenza. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today. We're looking forward to releasing 9 in the fall, and thanks for attending.